Recording in progress.
So you can start whenever you're ready.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bryn Cherie, and I would like to introduce to you the president of the Chicago Southside NAACP, Attorney Rose Joshua. Attorney Joshua is presently serving as president of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, Chicago Southside. She has been practicing law in the state of Illinois since 1988, concentrating on civil litigation in state and federal courts. Attorney Joshua is licensed to practice before the United States Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims in Washington, D.C. She completed her undergraduate work, history and political science, at the University of Central Arkansas, and shortly thereafter was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Army for 4 years. Her highest rank achieved was captain. She obtained her Juris Doctorate degree at Southern University, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and moved to Chicago in 1987. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Attorney Joshua for our welcome.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, Chicago Southside. This event is being hosted by our Toastmasters Club, chartered in October 2020, and our standing committees, political action, criminal justice, health, environmental climate justice, education, housing, and labor. Our mission at the NAACP is to achieve equity, political rights, and social inclusion by advancing policies and practices that expand human and civil rights, eliminate discrimination, and accelerate the well-being, education, and economic security of Black people and all persons of color. Since the pandemic, we have been meeting virtually, that is on Zoom, the third Saturday of the month at noon. The same link you use for this meeting, you can use it for our executive committee and general membership meetings. On November the 19th, we will have our unit elections, which occur every 2 years. All members in good standing will vote for new officers and at-large members on that day. On December the 17th, we will have our annual meeting where the president and chairs of standing committees will submit their annual reports and strategies for the coming year, 2023. Our Toastmasters Club is a social justice club. The club mission is to provide a supportive and positive learning experience in which members are empowered to develop communications and leadership skills, resulting in greater self-confidence and personal growth. The club meets twice a month on the second and fourth Sunday. I welcome and encourage you to attend our meetings, Toastmasters, and our regular meetings. I also encourage you to join the NAACP and our Toastmasters Club. So, why are we here this evening? On November the 8th, if you have not already voted, you will have the opportunity to vote on Amendment 1. I know that Amendment 1 will probably be discussed and shown to you tonight, but what it is an amendment. It is a proposed amendment to the Illinois Constitution, Article 1, Bill of Rights. So today, we will discuss some of the pros and cons of this proposed amendment, and hopefully You will leave this webinar having a clear understanding of Amendment 1. Our panelists will cover such questions as what is workers' rights and what is a right to work? Will Amendment 1 impact our democracy or our voting rights? Why do we need a constitutional amendment when there are existing laws on the books that will and are protecting workers already? What about jobs that are scarce in our community? Thank you. Now I have done the welcome, so now we will get into our webinar, and I would like to introduce our moderator for tonight, Brenda Cherie. Brenda is a frequent moderator of political and financial education seminars, former WVON radio talk show host, and former producer on WGCI radio. For 50 years, she has contributed her time, talents, and treasures as a board member and officer of several nonprofits across Chicago. Currently, she is the secretary of the NAACP Chicago Southside, and she's also the president of our Toastmaster Club. The Southside is on a mission to create hundreds of careers for African American descendants as licensed financial services professionals for those currently who are underemployed. I introduce to you now our moderator for tonight, Brenda Cherie.
Thank you very much, President Joshua. It is a pleasure to be president of the Toastmasters Club for NAACP. And in the spirit of the Toastmasters Club, we are carrying on the format. And I'd like to share with our audience what the rules are. Each of our speakers will be given 5 minutes. We have a timer that will flash a green screen when they have reached 4 minutes, an amber screen when they have reached 4.5 minutes, and a red screen when they have reached 5 minutes. After their individual presentations, what we will do, or what I will do, is ask them to frame what they have shared with us, their positions on Amendment 1, in the game-changing format that the NAACP does. And I will give those as when we get to that section. Our timer is Attorney Chelsea R. Robinson. She was born and raised in the Roseland community of Chicago. She is a graduate of Howard University and Loyola University Chicago School of Law. Attorney Chelsea is a founding member of, is a founding partner of the law firm Owens & Robinson and the legal consultant for the nationally syndicated court television show, The Judge Mathis Show. She is a member of the NAACP Chicago Southside, where she serves as first vice president and chair of the Criminal Justice Committee. She is a member of the 5th District Pastoral Subcommittee of Cole. She is also a board member of the Georgia Doty Comprehensive Health. For the past 26 years, she has handled criminal defense matters. And now I will introduce our I will give you who our speakers are. I will read all of their bios in the order in which they will speak. Our first speaker is Adrienne Alexander. She has worked for ASCME, which stands for the Amalgamated Federation State, County, Municipal Employees Council 31 for the past 12 years and currently serves as the Director of Intergovernmental Affairs. She is originally a Georgia Peach and attends St. Benedict the African in Inglewood. I think that's over there on Stewart. Is that correct? Okay, being an Inglewooder, I remember those things. And next, we have Jonathan Jones. And Mr. Jones was born and raised in the Chicago Inglewood community. Jonathan graduated from Harper High School and completed his pre-apprentice training at the Washburn Trade School. Upon graduation, he completed his 4-year apprenticeship at George Vest Carpenter Training Center in Elk Grove Village, Illinois. Jonathan has been a member of the Carpenters Union Local 10 for over 31 years. Jonathan served as a union steward for over 5 years before becoming a union organizer. In 2008, Jonathan was appointed as a representative for the Mid-American Carpenters Regional Council, and he currently serves on any number of both governmental, labor, and community organizations. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Jones. Our next speaker will then be Marcus Shepard. Marcus Shepard is the Director of Organizing at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Marcus got his start in the labor movement with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades Districts Council 7 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. After finishing top of his class as a drywall finishing apprentice, he was an organizer at District Council 7 and became the first Black president of Local 781. As organizing director of the Chicago Federation of Labor, he works with the community and faith-based organizations to help change people's paradigms of social and economic well-being. Give a wave out there, Marcus, so people can see you. We then have Mr. Ted Dombrowski. Ted Dombrowski has been president of WirePoints since 2017 and previously served as vice president of policy at the Illinois Policy Institute. Prior to that, he spent nearly 2 decades overseas helping manage Citibank's operations in Mexico and Poland. He has a master's in public policy from the University of Chicago, an MBA from Wharton School, and an undergraduate degree from Georgia Tech, a rambling wreck from Georgia Tech up here in the Windy City. All right. And last but not least, we have Anthony Travis. Anthony Travis has an associate's degree from Triton College and a bachelor's from Chicago State. He is a veteran. Thank you for your service in the Army. And he has had experience as a school board trustee with Proviso Township since 1991 to the present. He is currently executive director of Daddy's Club 2020 through 2014, and has had management warehouse experience, and he was a village trustee for Maywood. He is an all-around guy, and I saw one of Daddy's little helpers there. So thank you very much, Anthony. You will be our last speaker. Okay. And now for our first speaker, Ms. Adrian, you will have 5 minutes to give us your position on Amendment 1.
Thank you, Ms. Sharif, and thank you to everyone who joined. I first want to warn people that I have young kids. It's near the end of the night. You may hear them. But I just wanted to talk briefly about why this is such an important amendment, particularly for Black folks who are represented disproportionately in the ranks of unions like my own in the public sector. We know that the public sector was the first to desegregate, and that Black folks have traditionally been able to find employment there. It's, sometimes you hear talk of amorphous government unions. We all have folks in our family that work in these jobs, work in the library, work for the city, work in the county, in Stroger at Oak Forest. We have folks that work for the state in human services and unemployment. And, we're the folks that are making sure that government provides the safety net that's possible for everyone who needs it. So this amendment, and I dropped the exact language in the chat, does two things, basically highlights that there's a fundamental right to collective bargaining and make sure that no politician going forward can diminish that right. So there's a lot of rights that are protected in the Illinois State Constitution, and this would just elevate collective bargaining to that. And I want to make sure that we all have a same understanding. Collective bargaining is merely the process through which employees who join together can talk to their boss and decide things like wages, benefits, and workplace conditions. So there are some areas that are permissive, that you're able to bargain over, but that you don't have to, the employer doesn't have to bargain over. But what we're talking about is preserving the process that exists. So if people talk to you about this amendment means that XYZ will happen, no, it's preserving the process for which we can negotiate. So it's really simple to me. I know in my own family, not just through the public sector, though half of my grandparents did work in the public sector. My other grandparents who worked in the private sector really benefited from unions. And, my grandparents who moved from rural Arkansas to Flint to work in the car factory and the hospital, I know for them, they articulated constantly what a difference a union made in their life, bringing them dignity on the job, increased wages and opportunities that they wouldn't have had back in Arkansas. And so I really feel very strongly about the benefits of the union for everyone, and think that it does deserve the place in the Constitution, like some of the other things like free and quality education or a healthy environment that are currently protected in our Constitution. So I'll keep it short. We have a lot of panelists, but that's why I'm supportive.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Adrian. And now for our next panelist, it will be Mr. Jones.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Brent. And thank you, everybody, for your time tonight to paying close attention to this wonderful legislation that will give every working person a voice. There is a very, very thin line between having a right to collective bargaining and not having that right. And that is contingent upon who's in charge in the legislative body in government. And to have that right of multiple workers in our state to be hinged on a political party or a political person at the top that would have the right to use the collective bargaining rights of hundreds of thousands of workers as a leveraging tool, I think is unfair. Many folks in our, many of us on this line, we spend a great majority of our time working. I mean, you get prepared to go to work an hour before, you go to work for 8 hours, and sometimes it's 10 hours, and then you leave and come back home. So you spend half the time of your life on a job, and we don't have anything in the Constitution that even address that, given that that is such a great, huge part of society and how we make our living. There is a lot of information that is being disseminated out, and it is creating a environment of smoke and mirrors and fear factoring. When folks are using language such as union bosses are people that work jobs just like everybody else. So it's once they union boss, that's union workers. So we're not separating members of a union from union workers or whatever. It's all combined workers working together. When someone says that the tax is going to be increased because of this, that's again smoke and mirrors, because there's nothing in the legislation that speaks anything of such. So if we were to take it verbatim for what it states, it's just, as Adrian eloquently said, it's carving out the right, no matter who's in political office, to have the ability and the capacity to sit down and have a negotiation, worker to employee, or between employer, employee, or corporate and workers, or whatever way you want to title it. It just creates an opportunity to have that conversation and not have it stripped away by any political party, whatever party that may be. Now, another issue is that, and I'd like to point out, is that today Illinois is a very strong collective bargaining state. We're doing very well, but that could change overnight. We have some states within within the United States that have outlawed collective bargaining rights. So that could be changed overnight. So just because we have it today doesn't mean we can have it a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. It all depends on who's in the elected power in our legislative body. So with that said, we're here tonight. We're workers. We work. I come from Inglewood, and so it's just given the opportunity and a right for folks to have that opportunity to have a voice at the table. So with that said, I'll give my 2 minutes to Marcus left.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. I'm most appreciative. And now we will hear from Marcus Shepard from the Chicago Federation of Labor.
So I appreciate it, and I appreciate being here. I guess the first place I want to start out is just debunking some things, because when we look at the Workers' Rights Amendment, and for workers, you know, we in this place of always trying to elevate, always trying to grow. And there's always going to be opposition who always trying to negate that and take our stance away. The Workers' Rights Amendment gives us the ability to grow. It gives Black people the opportunity, not just Black people, it gives everybody the opportunity to elevate and take a step up. One of the things that really bothered me that people are putting out there is this thing that the Workers' Rights Amendment is going to affect property taxes. I just want to say something real quick. We look at Chicago, and I did my homework on this. When it comes to Chicago, and it comes to Blacks being in home ownership or worrying about taxes on home ownership, the Workers' Rights Amendment has nothing to do with that. In Chicago, it's dead last when it comes to Black people owning homes in this city. So that should be just off the table, period, because the Workers' Rights Amendment has nothing to do with increasing taxes, increasing home property taxes, or anything. What it does is it gives Illinoisans the opportunity to elevate. It gives Illinois, it protects workers. 100% protects workers, no matter which way you look at it. It puts them in a place of positive gain. I mean, it protects them when it comes to the ability of injuries on jobs. It protects them when it comes to employers trying to take away pay. just like any union does, any union elevates you when it comes to stepping in there. It gives you those benefits that some people just don't have. It elevates everything that you do. And that's what the Workers' Rights Amendment does. And for a Black man or Black woman who sits in here and is listening to this, you got to understand truly and do your homework as to what this amendment does. Again, this is a game changer. This is a serious game changer that everybody should be on. The Workers' Rights Amendment helps to build an economy that works for every Illinois person here. It gives everybody, again, a chance for people who don't have a college degree. It gives them a chance, just like coming into the trades do. It gives them the chance to come in there and make a gainful employment and put them in a situation that's better for them, period. So, you know, we talk about always putting people in a place of growth and always putting people in a place of gain. And again, I can't mention this enough, is that, you know, these are the things that we fight for day in and day out in order to move the needle, in order to see people actually prosper, in order to see families, you know, move up and be in a place of gain. And again, a Workers' Rights Amendment does that. It strengthens our communities and protects first responders, the nurses, firefighters, EMTs. It protects, you know, building trades. It protects it even protects Starbucks workers, janitors. You know, this is an amendment that, again, touches every facet of life here in Illinois. And it's something that people really need to do their homework on to understand it and not just take, you know, people's words that it's going to change their lives or it's going to be a negative impact or this, that, and the other, because there's no negative impact when it comes to social and economic gain. It was mentioned that the NAACP stands for human and civil rights element discrimination, to eliminate discrimination and things like that, and economic security of Black people. Voting for this amendment is right in tow with that, for economic security of Black people, economic security of all people. Again, you know, nobody can tell me that this amendment is going to be a Debbie Downer or is going to do something that's going to break the economy or this, that, and the other. If anything is going to break the economy, you know, it's nothing to do with this. We look at, I keep coming back to it. It's all about growth. It's all about opportunity. It's all about taking that next level. And again, a Workers' Rights Amendment does every single step of that. I'll stop there because I can go on. I can keep going and going and going and going because this is heartfelt, especially for somebody who comes from, you know, parents who didn't have these opportunities, and now to sit here as a man in this position, in a position that I fight for workers all day, every day, and to give them something that's tangible, that, hey, we can move and we can grow and we can actually fight for our rights, especially as Black people, again, who don't have the things, who wasn't given the opportunity, and now we have an opportunity in front of us to take this amendment, run with it, be a game changer, be about growth, and be about opportunity, to where organizing and opportunity comes together and moves people collectively. I'll just stop there because it's already read, and again, like I said, I can go on forever about this.
Well, thank you so very much. I love to see this passion. They say that passion drives everything. Our next speaker is going to be Ted Dombrowski.
All right, thank you all for letting me be here. And I do love the passion. And what I do love is having the ability for people with different views to come together and speak rationally, reasonably, and everybody make their case. And that's how it should be. Sadly, most of what's going on in our country isn't that way. So thank you all for allowing me to speak. Respectfully, Marcus, I disagree with most of your points. I agree with the points about helping, you know, this is the NAACP group. I totally respect your points about helping the Blacks in the community. And I would argue that this amendment doesn't help the Blacks. It will hurt the Blacks. And it ties into a lot of the problems that Illinois already has. Chicago has one of the highest Black unemployment rates in the country, way higher than the national average. Chicagoans, and I'll put blacks in here, and I've traveled the state. I've traveled South Cook, pay some of the highest property taxes in the country. They're getting whacked by that. We've seen all of our companies leave South Cook, leave Chicago, especially South, and leave the areas where property taxes are high. Home values have been destroyed, and jobs aren't there. So when we talk about Illinois, I'm sorry to be a little skeptical, but I've lost a little bit of faith in both sides of the aisle in terms of what they've left Illinois. And if you look at most metrics, and I'm going to share my screen for a second, share a few slides of where we are, so that when we take into account when we make decisions about things like Amendment 1, we understand where we're coming from, and we understand where our politicians have left us. None of us here on this call have done this, but we have to understand that today, for example, we're paying the highest property taxes in the country. Most reports put us at number 1 or number 2. This graphic here shows all 50 states lined up, and in the far left is Illinois, and this is the percentage of home value that Illinoisans pay, almost 2%. That's really low compared to places like Harvey that I've been to that are paying 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%. It's crazy, and the home values are sad. Then you go to things like biggest pension debts. When we talk about collective bargaining, when we talk about public sector unions, we have to understand that our government is super expensive. We have the biggest debts in the country. This again lines up all the states in the country. And who's got the biggest pension debt? It is Illinois. We're going to suffer paying this debt down for a long, long time. Home value growth. We are third to the bottom when it comes to home value growth over the last 20 years. These are all 50 states again lined up. And when you adjust for inflation, home values in Illinois haven't moved. That means nest eggs have not grown. And again, for a lot of the Black community who would be watching this, especially in Chicago and in the South Side and South Cook, no, the home values have been destroyed. And of course, we're losing people. And now this is where I come into, if we don't make Illinois and Chicago area more hospitable for growth, for investment, and that means lower taxes, that means a bustling economy, we're going to keep losing people. When you take the IRS data of people moving into Illinois and out of Illinois domestically, we have lost on net basis over the last 20 years, 1.4 million people. And we know that Cook from Chicago and Cook 2000 to 2010 lost 180,000 African Americans and another 85,000 the next decade. You can't have thriving communities if everybody has to leave because the opportunities are elsewhere. And Amendment 1 will only make it worse. So I'm going to skip a couple slides here. So here's why I worry about Amendment 1. It gives employees, but it's not all employees. It's only public sector employees. Only 7% of our Illinois population works for government. And yet these powers, these massive powers, these will be the biggest powers in the country for government unions over taxpayers. By far, no state will have more powers for their government unions than Illinois. These powers will give them powers over their economic welfare and safety, and they'll be enshrined in the Constitution. And why is that dangerous? Because the rest of the amendment says no law shall be passed that interferes with those powers. So our legislature won't be able to try to lower property taxes, control the size of government, because it will conflict with the powers of the unions to negotiate their economic welfare and safety. So we'll be in a really tough place. And the last thing it does is it limits workers' freedom. It does block right to work. And that means that people in the private sector are forced to join a union, whether they want to or not. We don't give them the freedom. So bottom line on this, well, let me make one more important point. Others have talked on this call about giving private sector people more powers, more safety, more pay, more benefits. This amendment does not cover the private sector. The private sector is covered by federal law, and federal law supersedes whatever the state wants to do in the Constitution or by law. So therefore, this amendment does not cover benefits, pay, all that stuff for the private sector. It is only about the public sector. So these ads that you see on TV, this nurse talking about having more powers and safety and all that, it's not true. It's not true because the private sector is covered by federal law. So this amendment only accrues to the government unions. So the last point I want to make, if this gives our government unions,
And we are, right now, we are out of time. We've
oh,
gone
I will
to
stop
the-
there. Sorry about
Yeah.
that.
Okay,
Thank you.
no problem at all. We went to the 30 seconds.
Thank you so much.
courtesy. No problem, and we will you'll have another chance to
Yes.
make your points, Ted. And now our last panelist, or not our last panelist, we have one other one that was having technical difficulties, Paul Tolson getting in, but we will now hear from Anthony Travis.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, NAACP. When I think about my background and the fact that I was elected to public office at the age of 23, I served 8 years as a village trustee. So I understand municipal government. I spent 1991, I got elected to the school board in Proviso and to the present. And I oversee close to $400 million in school funds. I had an opportunity to sit on the governor task force for property tax relief. And instead of getting property tax relief, we got hit with SB 508, which will raise your property taxes every year unless we get that rescinded by SB 3204 in the veto session, November the 16th. Also, I want everyone to understand one thing. I come from a family of union folks. My mama was in the union. My daddy was in the union. My brothers, my aunties, myself. My mother was a union steward. My brother was a union steward. I was a union steward. I believe in unions. Don't get me wrong. But I also understand one thing, and Ted pointed it out. We are neck and neck with New Jersey. Highest property taxes in the United States of America. We got 7,000 units of government, more than any other state in the union. And then in 1970, we got hit with a constitutional convention that gave us Article 13, Section 5, that helped create the pension crisis that we have today. Ted touched on that. When you enshrine something into the Constitution, that means you can't fix nothing relating to that issue. And so when I think about Amendment 1, where it does have some good points, but as we say, the labor policy should be in the law and not the Constitution. And when I look at the lines, when we talk about economic welfare, we don't know what that means. But CTU got that language in their contract. And when they did go out on strike, one of the things they used was economic welfare, which means, hey, I want y'all to pay my mortgage. I want you to pay my rent. I want you to pay my car note. All of that stuff that can come up under the jurisdiction of economic welfare. Also, when you think about the fact that we do need to consolidate, liquidate, and reform the 7,000 units of government that the governor spoke of in 2020 in his State of the State address. And he told both sides of the aisle, you guys need to come together and bring this stuff down. We done lost over 1 million some people because property taxes is kicking us in the butt. And let me make something perfectly clear, Marcus. I want you to understand. you make the point that Amendment 1 don't affect the property taxes. Let's break this down. When you look at Amendment 1, and it really touched government workers, you got your state who gets paid by income tax and the fee structure. But then the other units of government that fall up under municipalities, townships, county, special districts, your state schools, and your junior colleges, all of these people get paid by one thing, property taxes. So if you go in and you can negotiate a contract for these local units of government workers, that affects your property taxes. And this is where the fallacy come in at when you guys say it don't affect your property taxes, because it does. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, I thank you so very much. And one of the things that in the rules, I should have said, we're not going to call out each other's for varying opinions. I'm the bad guy. I'm the moderator. I'll do that. I'll call them out. Okay. All right. Unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, and if you probably see on your screen, there are two Bryn Sharifs. And I looked and I said, wow, I have cloned myself. And sometimes I feel like I need that. Anyway, Paul Tolson has joined us is what I'm trying to get out. And thank you so very much, Paul. I'm going to read just a few lines of who Paul is. He has been an active union member for over 31 years and a two-term elected executive board member with his union. He has had various has been in various political based committees and lobbied in Springfield to protect and assure a quality of life for its members and its families. So with no further ado, I would like to have Paul Tolson give us 5 minutes.
Okay.
Not here, that minutes, it'll be green at 4, wrap it up, amber, really wrap it up, red, that's it. Thank you so very much, sir.
Good evening, everyone. As she stated, my name is Paul Tolson. I am currently an executive board member for Local 241 here in Chicago, and have been involved in labor for quite some time. When it comes to the bargaining unit, when the right to work came out, it really hurt a lot of bargaining unit organizations or locals. In some states, it actually destroyed them. We saw salaries go from a livable wage to a non-livable wage. And especially with the increase of I'm going to say violence that we see on, public transportation towards public transportation workers, to go and say you have a livable wage of $28 to $32 an hour, and it goes down to $13 to $15 an hour. And when it comes to being able to bargain for a good livable wage contract, not being able to do that. That's what the Right to Work bill did. So as it stands now, we have members who have opted out of the local, but still get the same level of representation. That means just in court costs, when we have disparity that's given with a company, I'm just going to say company, I'm not going to mention any names specifically, but a body, and we don't have that bargaining power, it really harms us. And we use funds that we receive from these dues from members for lawyer fees. Okay, they can range $300,000 to $500,000 a year alone. Well, when you don't have that kind of protection, then it harms our bargaining structure dramatically. So at a grassroots level, straightforward, it is a union buster. It is a labor buster. And it creates extreme harm to our members, extreme harm to our members. So when we see that the funding that is needed behind this, because our members are making a livable wage. And the one thing that people don't really understand is that some of the bigger issues that we have in reference to not being in the local, they're saying that, well, I really don't have that many issues. I don't need a union rep for blah, 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 for whatever reason is for any kind of corrective action. Well, they don't look at the fact that we bargain for their salaries, okay? We bargain for their medical, we bargain for everything from vacation to their salaries. Maybe that's a better choice of words. And I'm sorry that I had this thing that was going to be really articulate, but because of what has happened here, and all of a sudden the stress that came up to this, and then boom, 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 I wish that I could be a lot more clear, and I just saw the green go up. But in a nutshell, I think that we need to really look at this as how it does create harm. To me, everybody's talking about property tax. Well, to me, if I knew that what I was doing or paying for, if we want to say property tax, was going towards the community and helping the middle class, I have no issue with that, compared to those funds going to the top 1%, okay? Or whatever it may be regarding to that level. So we firmly say yes to the right to work. To Amendment 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Paul. Now we have heard our panelists. We've heard the pros. We've heard the cons. And as the host of this forum that we have named Vote Woke, we want to wake up to what issues or what components specifically this amendment being appended to the Constitution will provide an improved quality of life for the game changers. For about the last decade or more, the NAACP has had game changers, and those game changers are civil rights, voters' rights, criminal justice, economic development, education, environmental justice, and health. Because, Marcus, you had indicated this amendment appended to the Constitution would be a game changer. What do you, not only what, but how will this, give me a scenario as to how this game changing will go, let's say in the area of economic development. Put on my preacher's hat. In Ecclesiastes 10:19, it says money answers all things. And so it appears that the reason for this being appended is that the unions feel that workers are entitled to more than living wages, and so it's a money issue. So let's get down to the, as they say, to the nitty-gritty of it. How will this raise the economic level development in particularly in Black communities?
So you were going in and out for a minute. And I think I caught bits and pieces of what you were saying. If I understand you correctly, you're looking for how this amendment will affect economic growth. Did I hear it correctly?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So when you look at the Workers' Rights Amendment and you look at work overall, I think minimum wage is about $15. You know what I'm saying? But it locks that in. When you look at growth and you look at the impact of this, now you're putting people in a place to say, okay, one, we could either choose to collectively bargain together for a higher pay, for better benefits, you know, or even if there aren't any union, they still have that ability to now, you know what I'm saying, choose to come together and say, you know what, we want to up our game, we want to up our pay, we want the employer to whatnot to be in a place of to put us in a place of financial growth. And then this also ties into debunking the property tax and all that debt, because what happens is if you look at people getting a pay raise, if a person gets a pay raise, that means that they're doing better. That means that the economy is growing. That means that sooner or later taxes are going to go up. So if people are in a space of constant growth, then that means Illinoisans, Black people across the board are doing damn well good. And everybody here should be happy to say, you know what, shit, we on top of, we cream of the crop. There's no problem with paying higher property taxes for Black people.
Okay. All right. Excuse me. The timer, I forgot to tell her. Responses, Chelsea, should be about 1 minute.
Well, you cut me at 1 minute.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, you
Madam
told me
Moderator?
you told me the what, Marcus? How? And that is the question that so many people are raising. Jobs are needed. Now, if you told me that you were going to create more jobs, now it is a question of jobs, not the people that currently have the jobs, because in economics, it tells you that if, and we have seen this over the years, if I get a raise, then, and my grocer then has to pay more to the truckers, then he has to, you understand, it's eaten up. It does not grow. Raises do not grow the economy. Either new opportunities of work create a way for economies to grow. So how does this promote growth, economic growth?
So again, it creates economic growth by putting the tools in place to give people opportunities. You know, you can't just say that growth comes by employers opening doors, by people getting, by jobs being created. You know, those where our programs come in place. The Workers' Rights Amendment is about putting in place a policy, an amendment that puts people in a category of economic wealth, because what happens is they have the ability to go in and say, and again, I get the question that you're asking, and this is where, you know, I'm gonna be frank, that's a little frustrating, because the question that you're asking is, where does opportunity come from? And this bill, it's centered around people being put in a place to be able to walk in and say, and I'm trying to explain the best way I know how to walk in and be able to fight for a collective bargaining, a collective agreement.
Okay, excuse me, but we already have the ability to do collective bargaining. There's no laws here in
It
Illinois. that
secures it,
prohibit
but we
that.
don't, it isn't secure. This secures it.
Okay, it may.
So we can go
secure
back
it.
and forth
It-
about that. It secures it, it locks it in. It locks.
Okay, it may secure it, and we can do laws to secure it. You know, the Constitution is such a all-powerful document. Does anyone else have any hows as it relates to what this will do to literally create more dollars? Okay, I see a
So
hand, Ted
yes, so
Dombrowski.
Madam, yeah, go ahead. Actually, Madam Moderator, Adrian had her hand up first. So I'm watching your
Okay,
hands.
thank you,
Adrian had her
thank
hand
you,
up
thank
first, and
you,
Ted will
thank
come
you.
next. I do want to
Thank you.
remind you, you have questions from the audience as well that aren't
Thank
being
you,
addressed.
thank
So
you.
we need to take
And
those as well.
we will go to that as soon as Ted speaks. So it'll be
Adrian,
Adrian, Jonathan, and then Ted. Yes.
I just want to
Yes.
step back for a second because it's hard for me, the way I think about it and what's exactly written and what you're voting on has to do with employees shall have the fundamental right is how it starts. So we're in its nature already talking about people who have a job, and it's talking about a process around workers who are already employed coming together to be able to negotiate with their boss. So we could tell you about how unions do X, Y, and Z, but what people are voting on Tuesday has to do with people that are already employed and already thinking about this relationship between them and their boss around collective bargaining. So I just wanted to step back and make sure that we're focused on what people are actually voting on.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I'm still looking for the how. And so Jonathan, do you have the how?
Then we said Ted was next. We said Ted.
I
Ted was
thought
next.
you said it was.
Ted is
Okay,
next. Jonathan
okay,
Carter.
thank you, thank you.
Yeah, for clarity, I'm gonna say how not. So if somebody else has a how, then maybe I should go after how it doesn't. I'm on the other side, so I'm happy to go
Okay.
ahead, but if somebody wants to defend it, they should go before me.
No, you can go ahead, Ted. We'll
Okay.
talk to you. Go ahead.
Okay, so for me, this amendment, it's how it doesn't help. You know, government right now is really expensive in Illinois. We have, as we've mentioned, we have the highest property taxes. We've had people leaving. We've seen, Chicago just lost, Boeing and Caterpillar and Citadel. If the government unions have more power, then they'll have more negotiating power, which means they'll get paid more, they'll get bigger benefits. Our unions are really strong already under current laws, under current state laws. If we lock them in the Constitution, we'll never be able to change them. They'll just have this locked in powers for a long time. And bigger benefits and bigger pay means higher taxes by definition. And that right there will scare more companies away because they're already scared. The pension debts have to be paid. They're already the biggest in the country and scaring companies away. So the bigger we make government, and again, this is not that we don't want to take care of our government employees, but they're taken care of by current laws. If we say no to this amendment, it doesn't take any of those powers away that they have today. But if we lock them in, it'll become more expensive in Illinois, and that will create fewer jobs because companies will leave. It's too expensive to live here. And we're already spiraling the wrong way because we're too expensive already. So I'll leave it there.
Okay, time. Thank you. And now we will hear Jonathan Jones.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. How do you say it? Narrator? Thank you. All right. So
Just Jeffer and Brand.
yes. So first of all, I would have to echo what Adrian has said. We want to actually address how this law, when it's passed, will, in its written format, on how it is. There is a lot of points that our opposition is speaking about I would like it as to, we're talking about swimming pools and they're talking about baseball, which has nothing to do with each other. I mean, when you start bringing up taxes and Harvey and all of that.
Excuse me, let me remind you, you were to make a point on how
Oh, okay, yes.
how
So-
it's going to improve the economic viability of communities of color.
Okay, yes. So it will improve the economic viability in our communities because it would allow the folks that are currently working, that have families, children, grandchildren, to always have that right to collective bargaining. If that right is stripped away through a legislative change at the top, then those rights can be stripped away immediately. We speak about the pension things. If we start to reduce or put in legislation that will take away those rights, then that could be very damaging to our community because it will give us that opportunity to have that segue in order to have a seat at the table and not have it where corporations will be able to dictate. That's it.
Okay, again, I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm understanding it. If I have the first question, Sandra, from the Q&A, and I would like to tell people that have perhaps put things in the chat is not being monitored, but if you have questions, it should be in the Q&A, please.
Okay, so for clarification, the audience only has chat. They only has Q&A. So that's where
Okay,
they put their
I
questions.
see 20 something entered
Yes.
into the chat.
And that's the panelists.
Oh,
All right,
okay.
I'll ask this first question. I'll have to interpret it a little. This is from D. Martini. It has to do with Black entrepreneurship. How does it affect one in the free market? Historically, unions have not been healthy or one of a track record of success. So I'm just reading it the way it is. So it's a little unclear. But maybe I would rephrase this to address how this amendment has the potential to affect Black entrepreneurship.
In entrepreneurship, for the most part, I think let's go with who hasn't spoken. Anthony, you haven't said anything.
Yes, let me clarify something because something is getting lost in translation. Let's separate the private sector from the public sector. We need to do that because the private sector make their money off of profits. That's capitalism. The public sector make their money off of taxes. And separate the state, like I said before, to local units of government. They all get paid by property taxes. And if you got a union boss or a representative negotiating with municipalities for more money, and that's what they're supposed to do. But we're living in a time, we're living in a state where property taxes is destroying this state. The pension system is destroying this state. And I hear what you guys are saying. And I understand how you feel.
Okay.
But if we don't get this stuff under control, we're in trouble.
Okay, we're at time. And the question that was asked, and I will, anyone, Marcus, you seem to, Ted's hand is up first. Ted, how will this Amendment 1, if passed, help entrepreneurs of color?
It won't help
Increase-
entrepreneurs of color. It will hurt them. We just recently at wirepoints.org, we put out a report just, I think last week. Illinois has the highest unemployment rate in the country, higher than every other state. At 4.5%, we're the worst. Indiana has a 2.7% unemployment rate. and Missouri has a 2.4%. So if we had the same unemployment rate as those states, we would have 120,000 more jobs today. 120,000 more jobs today if we had the same rate as they do. But no, we have the worst unemployment rate in the country. And there's a lot of reasons for that, our corruption, our crime, our mismanagement, but most of that has to do with finances. Chicago is a junk rated city today, and Illinois was almost junk rated until all the COVID money came in to bail it out. We are mismanaged, and a big part of that is government costs, because government is government union costs. So the more we raise them, the more powers the unions have, the higher the costs go, the harder it gets for entrepreneurs, because it's a tough place to do business.
Okay, time. Did I see your hand, Jonathan, to respond to that question? And the
Yes.
question is, how will the passage of Amendment 1 help entrepreneurs of color?
Okay. The Amendment 1 legislation is not written in format to address employees. It's written in place to put a segue in place that will be protected by the Constitution for workers to have the right to negotiate. And you said something earlier, I want to address the question, and I just thought of something else. When you have a elected person that comes in and they take away the rights of workers, even the current workers, a lot of them are mothers and grandmothers that are supporting multiple people in their families, and that could have a drastic effect on our community.
Okay,
So I
thank
just went through
you.
your questions in 1 minute. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, hey, I'm gonna give you an A on that succinctness.
All right.
Madam
Um,
Moderator, there are 2 more questions in the.
Yes, and I'm going to go to the Q&A. Sandra?
The next question in the question box is, wouldn't it help to get revenue if we passed a progressive tax like New York and California already have? Then we wouldn't need to entertain a property tax. Same with making Walmart and Amazon stop giving them tax breaks. So that question is posted by JB in the audience.
Okay, I appreciate that question and thank the person, but right now our focus is on Amendment 1. And the idea, will it help or harm the average citizen in the state?
Then
So
can I ask, I'm going
defer-
to ask JB. JB asked a second question, and you can tell me if you feel this is more in line with what we're our discussion, our topic. The second question is, aren't workers more able to buy a home because they're making a livable wage?
Okay.
Does that may
and-
address the economics question?
And that was the economic question. And if in fact they have a job, they would be able to. But economic growth is not increasing salaries. That does not increase economic growth in an area for some people to make more money. That is not truly economic growth. I will defer to anyone want to.
Let's,
Yes, my hand has been up for a while. I don't know why.
Okay, Paul, your hand is below your camera, darling.
It shows okay here, but my hand is.
Well, we can see it. Anthony,
Oh,
actually, Anthony has had his hand up, so I can see the order that they come in. Anthony has had his hand up for a while.
let's look at economics from a point of view. In order to spur on economic growth, you have to have a climate where the environment is friendly to business, friendly to workers. And if Caterpillar decide that they want to move to the state of Illinois, they want to look at what type of tax incentives can I get? What are my wages I have to pay? And how can I negotiate with the unions? And if Caterpillar is a company that has no problems with unions and have no problem with paying a livable wage, then that's going to help spur on economic development and growth. But if you have companies moving into a state where they already hostile because of property taxes, they're gonna think twice about moving here. And then our people, unless we got banks that want to donate money to them, that's the only way you're gonna get some type
Time.
of growth.
Time's up.
Okay, time. And now who did you say was second? Is it Paul, Sandra?
Next is Paul and then Ted.
Wages do affect increase or decrease in both manpower and jobs, period. So if was stated as a livable wage, the livable wage means that a community will see right now how hard it is to get manpower based upon a certain level of a salary that's being offered, okay? So if I'm at $15 an hour, if I'm offering a position at $15 an hour versus $35 an hour, okay? And I'm able to bargain that, I will increase jobs will increase. That community that individuals are going to will also increase.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, the next question, and Sandra, as you're doing these, I would like them to be focused on Amendment 1.
Okay, many are comments more than questions.
Okay.
I will read one from Letitia Taylor, and you can tell me if you feel that can be addressed. She says raises do grow the economy because the people no longer have to work 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet. They will only have to work 1 job, leaving 2 others for someone else.
I'd be happy to address that one.
Okay.
I think what we're forgetting in this discussion is who we're talking about. As I stated, and I can make more clear if needed, this amendment does not cover the private sector. So all this talk we have about better salaries and better pay and all that for private sector, this amendment has 0 impact on them. The impact is on private sector unions. So that said, we have to understand, there's the little guy who doesn't work for the government and who's struggling to make ends meet, working in the private sector, and there's the government union people who have their jobs. And so the more that it costs for the government union jobs, the more that the little guy, this is the Black community member that's not in a union, he or she has to pay more and more and more in taxes. And this is what we have to think about. How hard are we making it for the entrepreneur, for the business owner, the Black business owner, the Black entrepreneur, or the Black just resident who's trying to work to pay for a more and more expensive government class? And that's the real discussion. And so, yeah, you can keep pumping up benefits and pay for the government sector, but it's the little guy who's not protected by this Constitution, by these laws, by a pension protection clause. They have to pay more. And that's why Blacks are leaving Chicago and they're going to Houston and Atlanta, where it's thriving. It's much more business friendly, as Travis said, and there's opportunities there because they can't find them here. In Illinois, we're only taking care of the government class.
Okay, thank you very much, Ted. The question that you have next is, Sandra?
I have more comments than questions, so I'm going to let you go ahead and pose questions to the panelists.
Okay, all right. I was asking how, and what I hear is taking it from one pocket and putting it into another pocket and letting it circulate within that same system. And my question to, I'll say Paul, since you were the last one to come on and have had 3 decades of experience with unions, is the main purpose, and I know you did not author this, but I've heard it implied, is the main purpose of Amendment 1 to the Constitution to forever protect the ability of unions to function in the state? Is that a concern? Is that a fear? We haven't, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Is it Illinois potentially becoming a right to work state a concern that this legislation was then authored and put as a referendum to the people?
Could I just clarify one thing on the question, please?
Yes, sir.
Right to work would not stop unionization, correct? That just to make clear, that would only give a worker a choice to be in the union or not. So even if
Okay,
Right.
okay.
you
All
still
right.
have
Thank you.
unionization like usual.
Thank you, thank you.
Can
Thank
I comment on one?
Oh,
Let me ask-
okay,
let me
can
ask the question.
Paul
Let me-
speak
Yeah,
first and
yeah.
then you, Jonathan?
So, okay. I'm gonna come to you as at a grassroots level is what we feel, what we see. So there's things that can be conversation and talk, okay? I'm gonna say, I'm using this, and excuse what I'm about to say, a pig with lipstick, okay? So we can say multiple, I'm sorry, Miss Alexandra, I feel you. But the reason for it is, yes, it does. It harms unions, period. To say that it does, that the right to work does not, it does. Okay, it is a concern, it is a fear. Okay.
But that's not the question, Paul. The question was the purpose of the legislation. Was the legislation, do you believe, and this is your opinion, was it written out of fear that the union, that there might be legislation forthcoming that would prevent unions from operating or diminish the power of unions in the state? Is that really the bottom line?
Okay, that is a real loaded question. So, because right to work has already done that. So the fear is there already present. So for it to be saying that it was written because of the fear that eventually it might get worse or whatever, it already is. It's already been done with the right to work. The other part of it is, yes, people are worried about, okay, if I'm used to a certain livable wage and all of a sudden now I don't have that option or able to bargain that option, that is definitely a fear. So this was written basically, we feel, to protect the worker, okay, because the threat is already there.
Okay, thank you.
Answer the question.
And I'm going to go to Jonathan, and then I have another question that I will pose to any of the panelists.
Okay.
Jonathan, you had a statement.
Yes, first of all, I wanted to just address Ted. Ted is an expert in policy. Did you do research to find out that Google's coming to Chicago? Because you're mentioning about all of the people that's leaving, but you're not talking about the people that's coming into Chicago. I just wanted to address that. The other one wanted to address is the fact that right to work is very harmful in the collective rights of workers. And so we cannot allow certain words to be separate workers from unions, because workers are unions. So I just want us to stay in line with that. And to answer this question, it does harm private sector unions because it forces unions to represent people that don't pay dues to the union. So it is a legislation designed to undercut and destroy unions, which as a result, destroy workers' rights.
Okay,
I'm still on
I
yellow.
think,
All right.
okay, thank you. Man, a few words and very, very salient.
Also,
Okay, Anthony, I think
Also-
Anthony's next, right?
I think what Johnny was getting at, when you think about the Jonas decision, where you have union workers and you have workers who don't want to be in the union, but they want the benefits of the union. That's another critical aspect of this situation at hand. But the bottom line, and I'm looking at this whole thing from the taxpayer's perspective and the fact that we have some serious economic issues and we must deal with these issues or won't none of us be here.
Okay, I thank you.
Can I say something real quick? I'm sorry. I know I didn't have my hand raised, but
Okay, Paul
Just-
Tolson, and you're going to address the,
statement that Anthony had mentioned regarding we're all talking about economics. Okay, so the issue that I have is that for years, let me even step back from that. It is amazing to me how when funds are being directed towards the middle class, it becomes this big fiscal issue, okay? When it does not relate to it, we don't hear any of this. So right now, if we're talking about that, I have no problem paying taxes when I see that my community is benefiting from it. So to me, that's a moot point immediately, my opinion, okay? So I think it is important. And then after that, just find other methods or other ways if we want to talk about raising the debt. But the community is benefiting from it. I have no issues with that. And I think most do not.
all right, I thank you so very much. We are coming down to the very narrow part of it. Are there any more questions or just comments, Sandra, before I call on Ted?
It is mostly comments.
Comments? Are any of those comments, can any of those comments be converted to a question?
Did we answer, are we to understand that the first of the amendment one will raise the property taxes in Illinois? Did we,
Well, it's not confirmed, it's different opinions.
okay, that was a question in the chat, in the.
Oh,
Right, but
Okay.
that is one that's been discussed. There's no definite answer to that one. We
Yeah.
have
Well, the
addressed
answer-
that. We've addressed that
answer-
question.
To answer,
Yeah.
the answer to that question is yes,
No,
especially when you
uh,
look at
Anthony,
That's not
it
true.
is Ted, it's
That
Ted
is
to
true.
speak at this point.
Okay, so I do quick answer on that one. More union power, more negotiation powers, higher taxes by definition. Listen, I want to talk about one thing which is unrelated to everything we've talked about. And this is about union powers and one that people should really consider. We're talking about the Black community here. We're talking about Chicago Public Schools, and we're talking about the Chicago Teachers Union. Now, if anybody has followed Chicago Teachers Union, they've struck or walked out on students 5 times in the last decade. They have amazing powers. They can shut down the schools like that. They determine everything that goes on. Imagine giving them more powers, because this amendment gives them more powers over their economic welfare and safety. So what does that mean? I mean, that means that they could negotiate over many, many things. When you add those 2 new terms, they can start negotiating for things that benefit them in ways that we don't understand today. That's 1. 2, they could also start negotiating things like sex ed in kindergarten, which not everybody wants. I know some people may be okay with that, but a lot of people don't. They could force mask mandates, force vaccinations again if COVID comes
So
back.
I think he's going a little bit overboard. Can we stick to what?
No.
This is
I'm sorry,
talking about
Marcus.
Amendment 1, and
Marcus, I'm
Amendment
speaking.
1 Is how we protect workers. and how
Marcus,
we
no.
uplift
Okay,
workers. Because
I'm sorry.
Excuse me, time out. He just reached his 1 minute. Just reach the 1 minute, because these are time now. These are not going
Can I
to go
just-
on forever.
Can I just close my point? Just one,
And if you can do it
15
in,
seconds, 15 seconds.
and you've actually gone beyond the grace period, Ted. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. So
and
if I can just say, this is
I'm just saying, you've gone beyond the grace
Okay.
period. Marcus, do you have a rebuttal to what Ted said?
I really want to just bring this back to what this is. And before I even do that, You know, the conversations here are like apples and oranges. You know, we talking about protecting workers, giving workers the ability to collective bargain, to put people
That's
in a
it.
better space of economic growth. And, you know, then we have, you know, people fighting for employers. And then we have, you know, people who are who come out of a union and been upgrown in a union fighting against it. It just and the whole point is that this amendment gives workers the ability to collectively bargain, to gain economic growth. That's what this is about. It's about economic growth for workers. It's not about putting people in a hole, moving jobs away. Because if we look at Chicago, Chicago is in a growth pattern. You know, we got businesses growing. We got people wanting to unionize because they understand that to collective bargain means that they have the ability to now change their paradigm. And to change your paradigm is about growth.
Okay, all right. Now, you have really nailed it on the head, Marcus. We are talking, it's like one part of the panelists are from Mars and the other are from Venus. You're not speaking to each other because you don't, I have asked how, and the question is how. When I ask the ones that tend to be more pro, I don't get a how. If I ask the people that are against the amendment, they can articulate the hows. And so you are right. Everyone is talking back and forth. It has been a wonderful discussion, lively discussion. We are timely people. We said this was going to be 90 minutes, and 90 minutes passes very quickly when you're having fun. Madam President, would you like
Sharif,
to?
I'm sorry. Ms. Alexander had her hand up for a long time and never got the opportunity to speak. And I really would like to hear what she has to say.
I did not. Oh, you know, I'm looking at these hands up here and I didn't even see them.
She can have all 5 of my
me.
minutes.
Please excuse me, Adrian.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I just wanted to go back to my original point because I appreciate the questions that you're trying to ask, and they're important questions for our community. But I feel like you're trying to put this amendment in a box that answers a million questions that need to be addressed in our community, and it's very narrow. So what we're talking about tonight, when you talk about the economic welfare and safety at work, there's still things that are, you know, subjects of bargaining that we can talk about at the table, because this, at the end of the day, is simply about what happens in negotiations across the table. There's some things that the union could bring up, but the employer doesn't have to address. So these extra things that are brought up, they don't have to be addressed. We're talking about a very narrow thing about protecting an idea that workers can join together collectively to make better for themselves, and to sit across from their boss and argue about wages, benefits, and what happens in their workplace, whether it's discrimination, harassment, or other things. It's about sitting across the table. You still have the boss at the other side of the table.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Will
And
we get
now
will we
President
get time
Joshua.
for will we get time for
Excuse
30
me.
seconds to
No,
close?
we don't have time. We are
Okay.
right at that 8:30 mark. Madam President Joshua.
Wow, she ended it quick.
We have lost her. But I want to thank all of you. I especially, Chelsea, want to thank you and Sandra for making this an interesting international Toastmasters experience. And I would ask all of you that have participated in this, I hope that you have enjoyed it. I know that if we were all in the same room together, we'd all do a kumbaya hug and say, see you after the 8th. As one of my former friends used to say, and when I say former friends, he would still be a friend, but he's gone to the heavens. He used to say, I have no enemies and I have no friends. Whatever it happens to be is what it is. And so I embrace all of your rights to have your opinions. And I thank you so much. Reverend, excuse me, President Joshua, you're now back. Do you want to close us out? Can you hear me? Attorney Joshua?
I apologize about that. Can you hear
No
me?
problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And my internet, it says my internet connection is unstable. This was a very, very interesting event. And I see, who's for workers' right and who's for on the other side. I'd like to hear more about, the language of the amendment 1 itself, but that will probably be on another Zoom call. So I want to thank our panelists for coming and the audience and also the people who helped. There were some people in the background that really helped us get this together in a very, very short time. Sandra Washington and Dragos Doran, who was in the back. You probably saw them initially. And thank you so much, Chicago Federation of Labor and all the other union representatives, and also Anthony. And I've been in meetings regarding Amendment 1, and I've heard what it is and what people are saying. And I just want to say that our unit of the NAACP actually voted no on Amendment 1. And one of the reasons is because of the broadness of the language. We believe that workers, employees now are already covered by present law, and that we don't need a constitutional amendment to do what you need and what you want. So that being said, we'll close this meeting and thank you all.
Excuse me, Madam President. As usual, we start with a prayer. May we end with a prayer?
Did we have a prayer in the beginning?
No, we did not. May
Oh.
we end it with a prayer? And
Go
I'd
ahead,
like to,
Madam Moderator.
okay, I'd like to do a prayer of protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. May all of us and our families continue to have good health, wealth, and be blessed and stay safe.
Amen.
Thank you again.
All right.
Amen.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.